This podcast is not for the overly sensitive, the terminally optimistic, or anyone who thinks dating in your 50s is a whimsical romantic comedy. Listener discretion is advised.
Girls Can Tell with Trent Erickson. Subscribe, share, catch new episodes weekly, and try not to take it personally.
I want to try something different today. This episode is designed in a way you haven't heard on this show before. I'm not going to explain it yet, just stay with me and pay attention. Not so much to what I'm saying, but to how I'm saying it. That's all I'm going to say for now. There's something I've been thinking about lately that starts on a street corner and ends somewhere much more unsettling. If you stand on a corner in any city and look up at nothing, just stop, tilt your head back, and stare at an empty patch of sky, something interesting happens. People walking past you start looking up too. They don't know why. Nobody told them to. There's nothing there. But the mere fact that you're looking is enough to make them look too. It's called social proof, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human behavior. We're wired to follow the attention of other people. We assume that if someone else is looking at something, there must be something worth looking at. We don't verify or question it. We just look. The same thing happens when people start running. You don't ask where they're going or why. You feel it before you think about it. Your body wants to move in the same direction before your brain even has decided whether running is the right response. We trust cues, follow signals, and assume that the information presented to us is something real. And for most of our lives, that assumption worked. If you heard a voice, it was that person. If you saw a face, it was real. If someone left you a voicemail, it came from them. Those weren't guesses, those were safe assumptions. They aren't anymore. A while back, I ran an episode of this podcast that was different. You probably don't remember it as being different. That's the point. I cloned my own voice, using audio from this show, the same audio that's been sitting out there publicly for anyone to access. I created a synthetic cloned version of my voice that could say anything I typed into it. And then I used that voice for an episode and released it without telling anyone. Nobody noticed. Not one message or comment about it. Not a single person reached out and said something sounded off, different, or slightly wrong. And I've been thinking about that ever since, because what it means is that the thing you rely on to recognize me, your ear, your instinct, your sense of familiarity of how I sound, is not reliable in the way you think it is. It feels reliable, but being reliable is a different thing. And right now, in this episode, you're demonstrating that to yourself in real time. Here's what's actually required to clone someone's voice right now. A sample of their voice. That's it. Not a studio recording or hours of material. A voicemail, a short clip, a few minutes pulled from a publicly available post or video. You run it through any one of several tools that are widely available right now, and within minutes, you have a voice that doesn't just sound close, it sounds the same. Same cadence, same tone, same way of landing a sentence, same pause before making a point. And it can say anything you type into it. Anything. I've spent 32 years in radio, and I want to tell you what I'm watching happen right now because I don't think most people have registered it yet. The voices you're hearing on some stations, not mine, are increasingly not human. Not all of them, not yet, but the number is growing and the pace is accelerating, and the gap between a synthetic radio voice and a human one is closed to the point where a listener cannot reliably tell the difference. Stations are already running AI hosts, full segments. The AI reads the news, it delivers traffic, it talks between songs with commentary that sounds like a person who has opinions, a personality, and someone who has somewhere to be after the shift ends. It doesn't. But you wouldn't know that from listening. People don't notice, or they notice and don't care enough for it to change anything. The research says when listeners are told after the fact that a segment was AI generated, most say they couldn't tell. And their experience of their content wasn't significantly changed when they found out, which means the thing that made human broadcasters valuable, the presence, the sense that a real person was on the other end of the signal, choosing those words, meaning them, apparently isn't something most listeners are consciously tracking. That's hard to sit with when you've spent 3 decades trying to be good at exactly that. Podcasts are the same. There are many shows right now with real audiences that are entirely AI generated. The voice is synthetic. The script is AI written. The host has never had a thought or feeling or a bad day. And people subscribe. And they leave reviews saying how much they enjoyed it for a host that doesn't exist. What feels authentic and what actually is real are no longer reliably connected. You recognize my voice. You've been listening long enough to feel like you know how I think, how I build to something, what I sound like when I'm being straight with you versus when I'm exaggerating to make a point. But I just told you I've already done this, already ran a cloned version of my voice on this show, already let you listen to something that wasn't me and watched you not notice. So I'll ask you something directly. What are you trusting right now? Actually, think about that for a second. You're trusting your ear, your familiarity, the accumulated sense of knowing what I sound like built up over 50-some episodes. And I'm telling you that sense of knowing and that feeling of recognition is exactly what voice cloning is designed to replicate. That's the target. The technology is built to fool people who know the voice. Because strangers don't trust a voice automatically. Familiarity is what creates trust, and familiarity is now something that can be manufactured. Which means the closer you feel to a voice, the more effectively it can be used against you. That's just how technology works. The documented cases of this are already real. People on video calls with someone they thought they knew, a face that looked right, a voice that sounded right, an interaction that felt completely normal. And none of it was real. And they believed it because everything matched what they expected. That's the gap between what you expect and what's actually there. And right now, that gap can be engineered and managed by anyone with a laptop and a sample recording. Your voice greeting is a sample recording. That's something to think about. Here's what actually happened in this episode. At several points during what you just listened to, the voice you heard was not me. It was my clone. I'm not going to tell you where. Go back and listen again. See if you can find them. Pay attention to the pacing, the tone, the way certain sentences land versus others. Trust your instincts. Most of you won't be able to find them. Some of you will convince yourself you can. Something nagged at you, a particular moment felt slightly off. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're pattern matching onto something that was actually me and calling it a clone because now you're looking for it everywhere. That's the thing about doubt. Once it's introduced, it doesn't stay where you put it. So what just happened? You listened to this episode, followed it, and had reactions to it. And at multiple points, the voice producing those reactions wasn't a person. It was a synthesis, a very accurate approximation of something real that was not, in fact, real. And you didn't know. It's probably not because you weren't paying attention or you're unsophisticated. It's that technology is good enough now that paying attention doesn't help. That's worth carrying with you. If you couldn't detect it here, in a show you've been listening to for over a year with a voice you've heard hours and hours of, in an episode that literally told you it was going to happen before it started, what does that tell you about every other piece of audio and video you encounter? Every voicemail that sounds like someone you know, every podcast that feels authentic and present and real, every radio voice that's been keeping you company on your commute. That feeling of recognition is not proof of anything anymore. It's just a feeling. The most unsettling part is that you already knew this was possible. You heard about voice cloning, you've seen the headlines, you knew going into this episode that it was going to happen somewhere, and it still didn't help you. Knowing something exists and being able to detect it when it's actually happening are completely different things. Remember that the next time you hear a voice you recognize. I'm not going to tell you to stop trusting what you hear. That's not a livable position. You can't run audio forensics on every conversation. At some point, you have to operate on reasonable trust or you can't function. But there's reasonable trust and automatic trust. Automatic trust is what most of us have been running on our entire lives. The voice sounds real, so it's real. The face looks right, so it's real. The familiarity is there, so the source is legitimate. That was a safe operating system for a long time. It isn't anymore. Updating it means accuracy. It means knowing that a voicemail in someone's voice is not the same thing as hearing from that person. It means knowing that the podcast host who sounds completely human might not be. It means understanding that the cues you always use to establish what's real have been compromised in ways most people don't fully believe yet. You experienced that firsthand. You came in knowing it was going to happen. You still couldn't stop it. Now you know something you can't unknow. A voice being familiar doesn't mean it's real. It just means someone had a good sample.